What do I base that on? And how do I assess it and keep building on it? Because that's this whole idea about integration, that more and more parts can become part of it. So let's see what you've come up with. Because these are the things you're going to look at in your clients for. Okay, how do you know you're integrated? Bit of a problem. I'm going to divide it into two things too. Yeah, go on. Come
on. I know I'm integrate when I can use more parts. It's the integrate of my parts as functioning as one thing.
So more parts of myself included in the image, yeah?
Yep.
But it was a little bit more than that, wasn't it? It was more parts of myself included in image. But also I would say there's a congruency there. Yeah? They're all sort of going where my intention is going. So there's a congruency of action.
When there's a
sorry, I meant to come back. Sorry. How would you know that? Could you demonstrate that for us? Could you demonstrate it when it's not happening? And could you demonstrate it when it is happening? And you can do it in lying or standing or anywhere you like.
Yesterday I went dancing.
Mm-hmm.
So I put in my idea to work with this, with the line, the diagonal.
Mm-hmm.
So
demonstrate. So you're working with the diagonal.
Yes.
And I'll keep. Go on, and I'll put it on here. No. Because I want to see you do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was connecting. Doing this. So I was looking for this connection and then this. And this one, it leads me to some place there.
Mm-hmm.
And then come back.
Now could you demonstrate when you don't have it? Can you see what happened in a chest? Huh?
When I think in one part, this is one part, one part, and it leads me to another place. It depends on my intention, because if I want to go there, and I integrate in this diagonal.
Great.
But if I want to go there and I want to keep my diagonal, I can use like this.
So maybe there was a difference I could put in there is when my teleceptors, yeah. So the first one, you had an intention to go somewhere in space. The other one, you were exploring, but there wasn't a clear intentionality. So it was still a beautiful movement. It was congruent, but there wasn't quite as much intentionality. And we can talk about what gives us that. Yeah? But you could say intentionality in direction, if we wanted to. So I'm going somewhere, or I'm staying in one place, but I'm finding different possibilities. Yeah? Actually, I'll take teleceptors out of there. And a lot of that is that whole idea. So staying in one place and possibilities. Yeah. So a lot of those are really including the whole idea of what's dynamic stability. Have I got all of me and I can be going somewhere, or I just want to stay in one place? And look at the difference in my head. If I'm staying in one place and finding possibilities, now I'm going somewhere. Which one's leading from my head and my teleceptors more? The intention there, that I'm going somewhere. Yeah. So then my head has to be able to take it has to, wherever I go, everything has to know. So it's another level of organisation, really. Than here, my pelvis is the power and my head's free, but it's not, now I'm going over there. So it's that when you get up after some ATMs and you're in that place where you really don't want to move much. Do you know what I mean? I'm really happy where I am. But I'm not stuck here. I've sort of, and maybe it's a bit more daydreamy or, yeah. And then I can have an intention, and that's a different organisation. Okay, what else?
When your thoughts, whether they're spoken or imagined, are aligned with your movement.
So your intention into action, there's a congruence again.
Yes, and then...
And I don't mean intent, this is intention.
And you've done a beautiful demonstration of what I'm talking about.
No. So that clarity of intention into action.
How I find the ground, whether it's the main difference I'm looking for is sometimes I feel like I've got a lot of stability, but it's like stuck stability. And then then I look for, has that sense of ground and the stability still there, but with the potential to move.
And that ground can be anywhere. It can be your feet, it can be your back when that's constantly changing. So you've got that, if you like, that movability. Sorry? Yeah. So have a stand. How would you show us the difference? How do you know when you're stuck? Do you know what I mean? When you're standing and you've got yourself supported and, you feel really solid. No. You're stuck. Yeah. Yeah. So how do we understand this in ourselves more and more when I'm here? And sometimes stay up, Gloria. So find that stuck a little bit. Because if I can breathe easily here, if my head can still be free, and it's not going to be as free, is it? Like it's not going to be able to move as much through space because in a way you could say I've lessened my base of support. Yeah, I've made my base of support even smaller. So I'm not going to move as much. But if I've got that, so Gloria's head, and she could that, oh wow, you kept yesterday's lesson. But I can still translate. So that's where we talk about neutral. So often when we're looking and we might be going, what movements are available in their head? And we'll often check flexion, extension, side bending. How does that go through them? So those planes of movement don't move us in space in a way. They're just what's available here. As soon as I translate my head, I must move through space if I'm well organised. As soon as I translate. So now my head's moving forward in space or backwards in space or right or left, a little bit up, a little bit down. All of those are going to move me. So that we really understand that difference when we say neutral is about this ability to move in any of the cardinal directions. What is it that we're looking for in someone's organisation? Which is what a lot of your lesson was about yesterday. Yeah? So it's that. And then, you know, most of the time what we're looking for is that I've got the translation and I've got this as well. So I've still got all of these. But generally, I don't really want all of those if I'm heading off in a particular direction. So how are we checking adaptability on someone? How are we checking that they're ready to go in one direction? So, but this movability, adaptability across the ground, because sometimes I really want to stand my ground. I don't want something to move me. I want to be stubborn, if you like. But there's a big difference between stubborn and stubborn, where I'm going to keep my ground, but I've still got possibilities inherent in my system. What else? Yeah.
I had being present with minimal fixed attention internally. So it's, I think it was sort of referring to you where you get the lightness is where
I'm going to put his
focused on the problem.
Feldenkrais's big word in here.
Okay.
Inclusive attention. Yeah. And within that there's always a movability. Yeah. Our attention is always ready to move. So that I can be really focused on you, but I've still got all the room and I've got behind me and I've got, no, I'm not. Where I've fixed. So have a stand up and see if you can do that, all of you. What's that mean to you? Because again, this doesn't mean anything until it means something in your sensation. So that, if we go back to, because we didn't do them all, that's staying in one plane and the possibilities of really happy where I am and I'm sort of, oh, what could I do? I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do. I'm still mulling around. I've got lots of possibilities here. And see if you can feel how fundamentally that's based in your head being free. In your head being free. So, you know, I might do this, I might do that. maybe that's another way I could look at this. And you can feel the weight shifting across the ground. And then see what would happen if you're doing that and you just stop your head. What's happened to your thinking, to your ability to move your attention, to see different perspectives? Because this is what we're interested in as Feldenkrais practitioners. How do we organise? How do we enact what we do? And then come back and let your head be free and just think, now I've got, that's what I'm going to do, and head off. That's what and feel the difference in your head. That's where I'm going. Because, these are the little things that are intriguing. Why is it that, all of a sudden I get up, I'm going to go and do that. And so I set off for my workroom, and then I get there and I go, what am I here for? Because I haven't been able to keep that intentionality. What was it? But what happens in that? If I've got an intention and I'm going somewhere, what's happened to because all of a sudden I'm thinking of something else. So how do I still think of something else but keep my intentionality? And it's a lifelong practice, some of these things. But this is what I think we're interested in as Feldenkrais practitioners. This is the, if you like, the big picture stuff that we're really interested in. When do I have to soften my intention? When am I? And what does soften your intention mean? How does it change your organisation? Okay. So inclusive attention. And again, how do you get that? What happens if I'm walking and I've had a client and we've been really investigating this connection between, on a diagonal, what happens in their head, what happens through all of them. So if I don't give someone the big picture of what's all involved there, and they go home and they go, I've got to think about my left shoulder and my right hip when I'm walking. I've got to think about my left shoulder and my right hip when I'm walking. I've got to think about my left shoulder and my right hip coming together as I'm walking. It's not what you're going to give someone generally to go home with, is it? Because to do an action, a big action in the world like that, you want them to have more global attention. So what might you get them to pay attention? Can my head just be soft? How much of myself can I include in my image when I'm doing something? So, where your head is in space, but something that isn't going to completely... and you're going to get that from the lesson. What are you going to get them to pay attention to? Because you pay attention to different things if you're doing a very discrete movement on the floor, which is some of the movements we've been doing, compared to if I'm rolling around or on my hands and knees trying to work out how I'm going to lift my leg or it's a different level of challenge, and your attention is going to move differently. It's going to be interested in different things because all of a sudden your priority is I've got to keep my balance, or it's safe to fall. It's actually safe to fall. So you're more, if you like, in survival mode there. So your attention is going to be responding in a really different way. So this movability of attention is really a big one. Yeah.
The breath. So
Your
the way-
breathing.
yeah, my breathing.
Mhm.
So when it's kind of flows easier, I know I'm more integrated. And how I would assess it in others, on others, it will be by observing or by touch, observing the pace where the person is breathing, if it is a deep breath.
So
or
think about
not.
you instead. How do you know that your breathing is
Yeah.
integrated?
I have more breath in more parts. So
Yeah.
I feel the breath is coming here.
It's a big
here.
one. There's
Even though there's
more
no movement,
parts of
yeah.
me available
Mhm.
to move my breath to. And depending on the position, some parts are going to be more available, but I've still got all of them in there. No?
And feels less stuck.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel I need to suddenly take a big breath, so I know my breath is not there when I need to grasp for air.
And there's that difference between the grasp for air and the sigh, which is often more a release. No? So what are the different things? So we're really looking for this adaptable breathing all the time. You know, that the rhythm and the pacing will change on what I'm doing, that they're ready to be really adaptable. Yeah, so breathing's a great one.
I was thinking for me also distribution of muscle tonus or tonus. So in comparison to it could be at the difference between before and after an ATM, where the distribution or the
So how do you sense
how
that?
do I sense that? Contact with the floor.
Mm-hmm. Anything else that you'd know that your tonus had become more?
Or if it was, I was thinking when it's not integrated, where some part is efforted, you can feel that. So
Yeah, it's
no parts stand out.
no
but
parts stand out often
Mm.
when you've got a more distributed muscular tonus. So if you're all sitting there at the moment and just tighten something, can you feel how that's going to influence the tonus? But a million things. It'll influence your ability to move across the ground. It'll influence the freedom of your head. Yeah, it'll influence your breathing. So often this, when we talk in terms of muscle tonus, is this feeling we often feel lighter. You know, just things feel more effortless. It's easier to lift ourselves through space. We don't have to push as much. So, you know, that's when it's interesting. When have I got an idea? Equalization of muscle tonus, and the big muscles are doing the work. And how do I then translate that into my sensory experience? Yeah. So equalization of tonus. Because so what I'm saying is you can't just feel that on its own. Yeah, it's other things that let you know that you've got an equalization of tonus. Yeah, what else?
Oh, sorry, I've got the box. I actually asked for this. Sorry. That's because I've got something to say. It's a feeling of contentment that sort of tends towards joy and non-judgment.
It's interesting when you get into words like that.
Yeah.
But for you, that's what it means.
You know, there's a sense of it being of an evenness in your emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
Contentment.
I think once you start to get into words like that,
yes,
I think I know what you mean, because when you're there, I can see you organising contentment.
Okay.
I'm just saying that contentment is not the same for everyone. But to say something like an evenness in my emotional experience, and how does that tie in with that I've got this ability
Yes.
to move in different ways across the ground.
And I suppose if you're looking at something in terms of those choices, that you're not defined. Well, at least I know when I'm in that place, I'm not making a judgment about the choices I'm making. I just allow them to happen.
Yeah, so I could say evenness, openness. The big one I'm going to put in there, and this is for everything. Yeah, this is the big one. There's a reversibility in there. Huh?
Yeah, I have a similar sort of thing in that I often look. My go-to, oftentimes, in when you first lie down and do a scan, the first thing I notice is my emotional tone. And then I start to go into my sensing of my body and that sort of thing. So I think one of the things that I look for is the changes in my language. So if I'm talking about, going into something, I'm anxious, I'm this, I'm that. And then if that changes to, oh, I'm curious, I'm interested. Wow, that's really, and I start
Look at the difference in our organisation. Did you see it?
Yeah.
That's what we're interested in.
That's the change.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at the language of emotions, you can it does correlate, obviously, with the body actions. And so you can actually get something from listening for that. And I listen for that in myself.
Absolutely. And this is where I'm going to put down here. Sensory integration. That I've got more and more sensory systems. Yeah? Because really, where do you feel it in yourself? Because this is a really big one. Where do you feel, I could say contented, or what do you scan for?
So I'm kind of looking for, so the other day we lay down, I think it was the first day, and how do you sense yourself right now? And the first thing that came into my head was the word happy. I feel really happy. And so then I started thinking, oh, okay, yeah, because, this is sort of free, and it sort of, I could feel it through, whereas if it was like, oh, I feel anxious, then it's probably going to be in a different part.
So again, what I'm encouraging you to do is to build that out.
Yeah.
To build it out in the full picture of the organisation.
Yeah. And then can you start to sort of move that a bit, and then...
Well, if I'm happy, I get up at the end and I feel happy. What is that?
Yeah.
Is it just that this has got soft?
Yeah, I think it's a sense of lightness. It's that same thing, how do you describe that sense of lightness as a body sensation?
So if I lose that lightness, what am I going to come back to? That's where you need more and more ideas. Because if you're only sort of sorting for, this just feels really good. It's a really valuable way, and we're trying to work out with our clients really quickly. I would say, and this says something about me, this is not saying anything about sort of psychologists. I find them personally some of the hardest people to work with, because feeling is so big in there. Yeah, that to bring them to sensing, do you know what I mean? To bring them to, how's this influenced by your pelvis being able to move across the ground? No, I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying this is for me. This is absolutely for me. You have to do it through your emotions. What are we going to do in an interview? Someone comes in, I've got these problems, this is what I'm struggling with. I'm going to pretty quickly ask most people, and how do you feel about that? What happens? Because I'm really interested in Do they feel at all? Is that a world they go into, or it's not a world that doesn't mean anything to them? No? So we're trying to get all the sensory systems. And remember, what are the sensory systems? The teleceptors, the vestibular system, the interoceptors that tell us about our gut, about our rich internal world, our circulation, our breathing, our proprioceptors, which are all about our 5 lines. Where am I in space? How am I moving through space? How is this shape changing through space? Give me an example. Yeah. Give us a. We'll get there. Oh.
I was just trying to gauge the whole conversation, and what you're just saying is about what's actually going on in the body.
That's what I'm interested in.
Versus what we impose our language on what's, so one's fact, one's actually an interpretation of what we think that might feel like.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's why Feldenkrais really worked with movement. Do you know what I mean? One of his big reasons for working with the sensory motor system is you're either light on the ground or you're not. Do you know what I mean? You're either heavier or you're not. You've either got your arms and legs here or they're here. Your head is either free to move or it's not free to move. So, of course, there's still going to be interpretations of it, but he felt that that was a way in that was a little bit less likely to get lost in words, that it was based in sensation. And of course, happy and joy and anger are based in sensation. But you know, I can be angry about something here, and I can be angry about something here, and I can be angry about something here. So there's many ways that I'm going to organise the spectrum of anger in my life, or the spectrum of happy. And where in this work, we never, you know, it's really interesting because a lot of people will say, oh, he leaves out the emotions. I think he's dealing with them all the time, and what he's trying to get you to is what you said, a more evenness, a place where your emotions aren't running over, where it's okay to feel really sad. Because it's really different to feel sad, and this is, you know, but I'm still all here. Then I'm so sad, but I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck. No? So that's what, they're the things we're looking for. Do you know what I mean? That what does reversibility mean? No? How do I know that I'm out, you know, the whole thing I talked about to you last time I was here, challenge and threat. How do I know when something's boring? How do I know when there's enough challenge that I can still spread my attention? Yeah, I get stuck, but I can come in and modify that a little bit, and I'm still curious, and I'm in a really challenging situation. How do I know when, no, that's life-threatening? I've reached the point that I don't want to go there because I'm going to be so stuck in my pattern again that I've got no options left.
Because that comes to like being motivated as
that intention into action.
There's less cross motivation. So if you're, you know, sad but you're resisting it, you're gonna be stuck.
Yeah.
If you're going, oh, I'm sad, no, I'll enjoy being sad.
Every part of me can be sad.
I can be all sad. It's distributed. It's not,
yeah, it's distributed.
Yeah.
So there's reversibility. We've distributed it throughout all of ourselves. Again, no. Ooh.
We've sort of covered a lot of this, but my big thing is being present in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to do something and you are still upset about something that happened yesterday, you carry all that with you. And if you think about the future and, oh, I've got a party tonight, or I've got to rush out and do this, then you also carry that in your body. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been fresh every
Yeah.
time.
Absolutely. You know, that's a big learning strategy, isn't it?
it is.
You know, and that ability to, you know, I'm doing something and I'm present. I mean, this is so much mindfulness too,
Yes.
all the time. I'm present and something goes off in my brain. I'm tracking, I don't know, no. Stuck again.
Yep.
Okay. So I think what Feldenkrais does is it gives us so many ways to come into that stuckness. So many different avenues that we can come in and explore how we're getting stuck in whatever we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously, like be ready to laugh and all of those things. It's connected with breathing. But.
And again, you know, it's the same thing. And how do I gradually over time find I can be serious about something, but I'm not serious about something.
Yeah.
No? So I'm going to put something in here. This head-pelvic connection. No. It's just fundamental. Huh? So your head is free to orient, to take you where your intention wants to go. Yeah? And the pelvis is the power behind it. Huh? And usually what we talk about head, but what allows this head to be free is this organisation between our pelvis and our first rib. C7.
Is that what craniosacral people sort of work on?
Sorry?
Is that what craniosacral treatments are about? In terms
it could be, but it's not
regulating?
looking at it in every orientation. So I want it in every orientation. I want it here and here, where I'm not moving through space. No? I want all of this to know. And when I know all this, my head can stay in the middle and focused on you. No? Because this isn't getting pulled by it in a way. No? So there's something, again, really powerful in the Feldenkrais method, because self-direction is, that's the whole learning part of it, self-direction. Huh? But if I'm always only doing it in one orientation, in one position, I won't transfer it. So there's something really powerful about understanding all of these different shapes we can make, this freedom of the head that tells us really powerful things about someone's organisation. I don't know if I said this. Yes, here, Roger Federer's here. I'm going to keep talking about him. And he said something really, another gorgeous thing on the, I heard him say the other day, which is, I know my body so well that I can tell if I can play with pain, that pain isn't going to get in the way. And I can tell when the pain is saying, stop. So what's he learning there? That if it's painful, I'm walking and all of a sudden my knee gets, if I shift my weight, if I find different ways, am I still breathing? Do you know what I mean? Am I still within the realm? I might have to sort of limp, but gradually I can, compared to if the pain is stopping me. Yeah? When it's actually saying, the number of people I'll get, who'll ring me up, it just really hurt my back, blah, blah, blah. I'll say, just go to bed, will you? I think your back's telling you to have a rest. It's not going to do any help. I know you want it fixed, but it's not going to help you by getting in the car, driving here, being uncomfortable. But how do I pick that out from what they're telling me on the phone? You know, I can't weight bear. You know, pain's a really powerful learner. So even after, and how do you know when pain is saying, stop? And how do you know that the pain's there and it's saying, something, here's my little warning signal, but it's okay. The number of people with pain that one of our biggest jobs is to say, it's not doing you any damage. It's okay. I know it's sore. I know it's really thing, yeah? Or when it's, you need to rest. But for so many people, because pain is danger. That's what it's there for. And it's that interpretation of danger. And how do we get that, a client of mine, she's had a lot of pain. She's got over the years, she's had a lot. She's got a lot of medical things, and then she broke a shoulder and didn't heal. So she's got this arm that won't move. And you could tell she needed movement. She was on really big doses of painkillers. It took, gentle prodding, gentle. I think going to the pool would be really good for you. Would you think about going to the pool? And you could tell for her a big part, because by this stage she was so skinny. So that for her, I could tell a huge part was, I don't want anyone to see me. I don't want anyone to see me looking this skinny and this. But as she got more parts in the image and she could move a little bit more freely, if she can get to the pool now 2 or 3 times a week, she can basically manage her symptoms. No? Movement is so powerful. But that resistance to know it'll do me damage, it's debilitating. Yeah. It's isolating. And it's fixing your attention. And you're making all these distinctions about one thing. And that's the difference between acute pain, or when it's become chronic. Yeah? They're 2 really different things that you're playing with there.
You're saying is to be able to teach is to teach the distinction between acute pain and pain that you can shift.
Absolutely.
That when you use a muscle, it sometimes gets tired.
And it's okay.
And it's okay because you've used it.
You've used it. It started changing its length.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. But that's another big subject, pain. So we've got a few things in here that you're looking at. Yeah. Big ones. This movement of attention is, how's my self-image at the moment? How much of myself am I including in my image? And again, that's different levels of integration, isn't it? Yeah? That you get up and you go, oh my God, I've just discovered I've got a sternum. But if you can't connect that with what's happened with my head, where's the weight on my feet? What directions can I move in more easily? It won't integrate. You've got to keep building the picture, adding more and more into the curve for people. And, and then bringing in that emotion, how do you feel? It's really interesting working with people when, a client who came in, Absolutely gorgeous. And this is, again, the difference between the learning and the movement strategies. What does someone need to understand as a learner? What does someone have to understand about their movement? Shows she's this gorgeous woman, comes in. She's a good learner. Now, as soon as I met her, it's like, oh, she's open, she's hopeful, she'd been working in the corporate field, her pain just kept getting worse, new stress was a big factor, had lots of other different modalities, comes for the session. And what I notice, and this is what you're beginning to notice when you're questioning, nothing moved. Nothing moved. She just held itself the whole time. Yeah? And not in a really necessarily, but everything was just held. Yeah? So at least she was sort of doing it with all of herself. You know, not parts of her. But it was really interesting. And she'd got a dog. She understood that she had to move to improve her pain, but this chronic pain was getting pretty disabling. And when you questioned her, you know, where is it worse? Oh, sleeping. Sleeping's really difficult. I wake up a lot. What else? Tell me more. What else makes it difficult? Standing. Standing is so difficult. And at the time, what she's moved on to is doing jewellery design and work and selling her jewellery at markets. Yeah? Really. Anyway, wonderful woman. So she was just really open to things, and she very quickly, I could feel, or she could sense that when she did something, her breath wasn't easy. You know, if we started quickly to look at, can you feel your weight doesn't shift? Yeah? What happens when we go to shift? Whatever. So the big thing for her was, can you understand if you're holding yourself like this all the time, standing is going to be hard. Because you're not letting your weight shift. You're just standing in one position, taking the weight through the same joints in the same way all the time. So, you know, I think in the first lesson, staying within what was easy, we just did a little bit on getting her to feel that she could begin to shift her weight a little. And why I mean she was a good learner is that, you know, she could get up, she could feel the difference. So not only is she a good learner anyway, but she can make distinctions in a sensory world, which is even easier for us to work with. So that she could feel, when I'm standing, I just have to keep shifting my weight. That's what I have to do. That's why walking my dog's good for me. I have to keep shifting my weight. What about if before I go to bed at night, I do something on shifting my weight, or I find a way to position myself at night where I know I can roll across the ground. I'm not stuck to the bed. Doesn't matter what position, she was stuck to the ground. She generalised stuck to the ground in every orientation, Philippa. She had it down pat. But it was all very quickly that this was anxiety. This was absolute anxiety for her because she used to move really well. So that's another big thing I'm interested in. You know, as someone had trauma, is there something that has brought this on? So I used to do this and I used to do that and used to do this, and then all of a sudden I've done something, and which is very different to someone, you know, how did you feel about movement when you were young? Did you enjoy movement? Did you like playing? Oh, no, I was never any good at sport. That tells me heaps. Yeah. Well, yeah, I was a really good swimmer and da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, I don't want to get lost in this, sorry. I could tell case histories till the clouds
someone
came
where
home.
standing is their main problem. On the one hand, you'd want to, if you were doing an FI with them, you'd want to work with them in standing because that's where their problem is. But on the other hand, when they're in standing, they're in a state of panic, so they're not in a state of learning. So could you say a little about
So
that?
what would you do? You know it's weight shift that's the issue. Huh?
So you might experiment with weight shifting in safer
In
feeling
any
positions.
position you like, you can play with it.
And then gradually do it in standing when they felt less threatened.
So you're going to start with, you want to start her in a position where she's not going to be stuck to the ground. So what I started her with was lying on her back with her knees bent up, so she already had more possibility of movement, not with her legs long, which is going to stick her to the ground. And then I put a really soft, long blanket under her where she could begin to feel that every time I moved her that there was probably going to be a little bit of weight shift. Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot lately, like you said, you know, you're showing a person a new way of being or operating, I guess, and organising. But I guess things with like chronic pain, you know, your brain learns to keep looking for it, so increases the pathways to do it, so it becomes a habit. I wonder sometimes if we just go to things because they're more familiar. So how do we make this new way more familiar to them and more comfortable?
Absolutely.
Than their old way.
Absolutely.
So they go to it.
And you've got to do it in chunks of working out what's possible for them. You know, it's like something that you can make a lot of distinctions about. You can ask lots of questions about. Something that you don't know anything about. Many people do not know the language. I was talking with a woman the other day and she was talking about would Feldenkrais be useful for particular people, and what it's about is, she said, you know, they've got to learn, they're doing all these dance movements and everything, and they really struggle. What is it that they don't even know how to sense themselves, most of them? What are they looking for when someone's telling them to do this? What's the language that they're not used to exploring? And that's what we're trying to work out all the time. What's the sensory language that someone understands, and gradually put in more and more.
I see that a lot in Aikido, because you get a lot of people who they see how it's done visually and they're creating an image in their head of how it should look,
too,
rather
believe me.
than
Lots
how it
of
actually
dances.
feels and how smooth it is.
And it's incredibly visual, incredibly valuable visual observation as well.
I found my learning got accelerated when my teacher used to demonstrate things very quickly and then go on. And the only way I could do it was to imagine myself doing it as he was doing it. So,
and yet, you know, Feldenkrais said something really profound in the lesson yesterday, because he said, you can't imagine it if there's no sense of it in your brain. You know, if there's no part of the pathway that you need to put this to the components that you need to understand to put this together, it's like a black hole for you. You can't imagine it. Yeah. And I'm sure you've all had times in ATM where they've said, imagine doing the movement, and you're going, oh. Because the components aren't in your system to begin to start putting them together.
I'm backtracking a little bit, but the more I think about pain management, it's like you're getting people to continuously focus on their level of pain versus something like you could remarket it as pleasure management. How do they manage their pleasure?
And I think that's where it gets really difficult, because pain usually is about focusing our attention. Pleasure is the opposite. Pleasure is inclusive attention. That's where Feldenkrais is going for this aesthetic appreciation. Because when I'm just really well organised and everything feels good, it's because all of these components are in there. I'm not fixing my attention. That's why when you look at a superb dancer, all you see is the gestalt. You see the person just moving through space. You're not saying, oh, notice their pelvis, what their pelvis is doing. But that's where our attention will get fixed, on the bits of them probably that aren't there. But isn't it wonderful when you first get, you know, there's that, it's so beautiful that you just get that whole movement. And then you've got the whole movement and I can go, oh, what's their head doing within this? And I'm going to be in a different organisation rather than, oh, what's their pelvis doing? Oh, yeah, that's... So this inclusive attention, this ability to have the diffuse and the, you know, the peripheral and the focused, the internal, the external, the big picture, you know, how do I scan through myself? And it's a skill that you learn. It's not something you do in your thinking. It's something you organise. How do I scan through myself? And I can feel all of myself and I can still go, what's my hip doing? What's my shoulder doing? No? So my attention never gets fixed. Nothing stands out. It just keeps moving.
Because I guess if you're imagining a movement that you've seen or been told to do, there's some image that comes to mind, you get some familiarity, but it's not until you actually try to move where you go, oh, I'm stuck. There must be something that's not included in this image.
Absolutely. And I would also say there's some movements that people can't even begin to imagine. You know, even if they watch someone do it, it's so far. It was, this is my last story. I think I told this about this, and the dancers will be able to tell me. The Israeli choreographer, what's his name? And he does these big pieces with lots of people. I can't remember his name. Yeah. But anyway, this is what he does. And you watch the choreography is just wonderful. You know, someone when I was in Paris said, have a look at his stuff on YouTube. It's absolutely stunning. And you can see he's done a lot of Feldenkrais, but then it comes, so he's got this woman and he wants her to do a particular move. So he's the choreographer, and he's getting her and she's in this position and he wants her to fall backwards. And you can see she's just so well organised and she's, you know, but she's scared. So she's bringing everything she can to the fore, you know, and she's going slowly and feeling her head. Can you see what her head's still doing? She's not going to give up her head. No? He cannot see this. And he just keeps saying, just fall. All you've got to do is fall. Do it quicker, fall. Fall, you know, and you can see, and each repetition she does it, you can see she's including a little bit more, but this head, no way is it going to give. So then he demonstrates. And of course, what's the first thing he does? He lets go his head. He just goes and falls. No? But he can't see what she doesn't know. No? So that's where it gets really interesting, and that's where, you know, in many ways, I really appreciate, you know, the pain I've had because boy, have I had to learn what it means to be organised in movement, to really understand so much of what's necessary. But, you know, that's where it gets really interesting that, you know, they all, you know, that terrible thing they say about, oh, those who can't, you know, if you can't do it, you teach it. I think the people who can't do you know what I mean, who have had to really work through a process because they really have to understand what's needed. What are all the components can sometimes be really great teachers, sometimes better teachers. Because sometimes they can empathise a little bit more with what it's like not to be able to do particular things. Okay, so that's our first bit on integration. So let's take a break and we'll come back and do another ATM.